Here we are with the minor 7 sus4 chord, the boogie chord. Why? Because if you chang-a-lang it, everyone wants to dance. Chang-a-langs with our favorite, the chang-a-lang. Chang-a-lang it, chang-a-lang, chang-a-lang. You're never gonna forget this. It's got to swing, okay? That's important. It's just kind of all about what you want to say. Carrot cake, carrot cake. Are you hungry? Carrot cake, right? 1, 2, 3. Mark Lettieri here with Musician's Toolkit. Today we're going to be talking about funk guitar concepts. Chang-a-lang it. Hey, what's up everybody? Mark Lettieri here with Musician's Toolkit. Today we're going to be talking about funk guitar concepts. Get excited. All right, let's talk about 7 sus4 chords, or dominant 7 sus4 chords. For this example, I'm in the key of B. So this chord is actually involves even less work the way I do it. It only has 2 notes, really. So check it out. We had our 7th chord inversion before. Well, to make it a sus4, we're going to take that E flat and raise it up, or D sharp, whichever you want to call it. There we go. So 7 sus4, right? So we end up with this. Okay, now, why is this cool? Well, what you have here is when you alternate between the 3 and the 4, it kind of creates this cool little melodic statement. You've heard guys like Prince do this on all kinds of records. In fact, just about any great 80s funk, soul album is going to have some kind of guitar part that's doing this. And the strumming pattern that I like to use kind of goes like this. You slide into the first voicing and then extend that 4th. So we have 7th and the 7 sus4s. You notice I'm only using the B and the E strings. So you can just take all these other strings off of your guitar because you're not going to need them for this, right? Now, check it out. Good way to remember this rhythm is the word carrot cake. Well, I guess that's 2 words, but check it out. Carrot cake, carrot cake. Carrot cake, carrot cake, right? Carrot cake. Are you hungry? Carrot cake, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Carrot cake, carrot cake. Carrot cake, carrot cake. Okay? Hey, you're never going to forget this, I guarantee. All right? So key of B, let's check out this example. One more time, I'll spell the chord for you. If we want to put the 5th in, we can. F sharp, A, and E. But really all we're going to work on is the A and the E notes, right? And then we'll like kind of shift between E and E flat. Thing to consider, make sure your timing is right in the pocket when you're doing that slide, okay? But we'll kind of tackle that when we get to the example. So here we go. All right, let's get into this groove, this Motown style groove using these 2 7th chord inversions. I'll play it, then you'll play it, then I'll play it, then you can play it again. All right. There there you go, Chang-a-lang's 7th chord inversions. And go listen to some Motown, just because. Just because it's good. All right, check it out. So we're in the key of D, and I'm going to show you 2 little 7th chord inversions. I like to call these small chords because they just feel small. There's only 3 notes. They're light and bright and kind of sparkly, and are great for funk because they stay out of the way of other instruments, right? Kind of important when you're playing funk. Sometimes you might have horns, you might have keyboards, you might have percussion, you might have all this stuff. So the guitar has to play a role that's very specific. And it's important to have these kind of smaller, tighter voicings that just allow more space for the other instruments. So here's the first shape. Again, we're in the key of D. It's like this. I'm going to put the 5th on the bottom. So we've got A, we've got C, and we've got F sharp. That's it. That's all it is. And then the next voicing is a little similar, another 3-note chord. This guy, just in a little bit of a lower register, right? So now we've got the 7th on the bottom, C, F sharp, and A, right? So what I did is I took these 2 little chords and put them in kind of like a Motown kind of groove, which is funk in its own way. And it's kind of characterized, at least in this example we're going to do, based on like what they call the 4 on the floor beat, where the kick drum is on every beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to revisit the Chang-a-lang, right? So if I were to play this, this is kind of what I came up with. All right, so what we're doing, we're Chang-a-langing. It's almost like a horn line in itself. You can think of like trumpets all playing that or something, you know. Anyhow, that's it. Let's do it. Let's play this groove. Okay, check it out. So we're going to use our 9th chord in D, and we're going to use our little riffs based off of the major pentatonic scale and the D mixolydian or D blues scale, however you want to look at it. I'm going to play it a couple times, and you can play it. Check it out. All right, my turn. All right, nice work. So now we're going to use this number 1 9th chord here, voicing, that I just taught you, in a little groove that I made up. It's going to go like this. Cool. Okay, so a couple things to think about while you're doing this. The first chank, I like to call these chanks, is going to happen on beat 1. The second one is going to be on the 16th note of beat 2. And the third one is going to be on the 16th note of beat 3. And then we're going to finish off with a 16th note Chang-a-lang, as I like to call it, right, to finish out the phrase. Funk is interesting because the more you try to count it while you play it, sometimes you lose the feel. So I'm kind of one of those guys that just likes to feel stuff, and then maybe I'll go back and count it later. I'm going to play along this backing track with this little phrase that I showed you, and then you're going to play it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, A. Now you play. Couple things to remember when you're hitting those second and third chanks. Think about the upstroke, all right? It'll help you keep time with your right hand a little bit. And going forward, that 16th note Chang-a-lang thing, that's going to pop up a lot in this course. The concept of the Chang-a-lang and the 16th note. Those are staples of funk guitar, and we'll touch on those in just a minute. All right, let's apply these 13th and 6th chords into a, well, like I said before, kind of Steely Dan-esque, sort of laid-back, funky, jazzy kind of groove. The first phrase, I'm going to take this 13th chord and I'm going to slide into it from a half step below. So it's going to kind of go like this. All right, we've been doing a lot of that kind of slide motion to give it some little extra flavor. And then I'm going to play the high A right here on top of it. So we're going to put the root on the top then. All right, then that's going to be followed by a whole step slide to our 6th chord, and then back down to our 9th chord. This is all in the key of A. So. And with your picking hand, when you slide into that 13th chord, use a downstroke, and then when you hit that high A, use an upstroke like this. And then a downstroke to play your sliding 6th and 9th, all right? Let me put my earbud in here. I feel like I'm a newscaster or something. Here we go, here it comes. Now you try it. Very good. 13ths and 6ths. Use them to add a little bit of jazz flavor to your funk and groove guitar playing. All right, let's check out some new chords, specifically the 13th chord and the 6th chord. Now, you might see these chords a little bit more in jazz, but that doesn't mean you can't play them in funk. So let's start with A13. This particular lesson will be in the key of A. So here's your main voicing. You've got A, I'm going to skip the A string, then play G, C sharp, and F sharp. Okay, now for the purpose of what I'm going to teach you today, you can actually throw away this bottom note. We'll let the bass player handle that. So really all we're going to focus on for our 13th chord is these 3 notes right here. G, C sharp, and F sharp. So technically this is a dominant chord. So you could think Mixolydian on top of that. All right, now we have the 6th chord, which is kind of similar to the 13th chord, but they don't call it a dominant 6th, it's just a 6th. So the emphasis is going to be on this syllable, the 6th note, right? So if you want to do the full voicing, we have A again, C sharp, and then again F sharp. But since there's no flatted 7, it's like kind of one of those ambiguous chords where it's not really dominant, but it's also not totally technically major. It's a 6th, right? So what's cool about this voicing, not only can you add the 9 on top of it if you want, to give it a little bit more sparkle, if you slide it down a whole step, now you're creating an A9 chord. So we have A6 and A9. I'll spell that A9 for you. Here's another cool 9th chord voicing you can use. A, G, B, and E. So, okay, now we got these 2 chords that we can move around together. Kind of sounds like some 70s jazz funk, like Steely Dan or something, right? Which brings us to our example. I'm going to show you how to incorporate the 13th chord and the 6th chord and this new 9th chord voicing to create kind of like a jazzy or funk kind of sound. So let's check it out. All right, let's talk about funk and country music for a second. That might seem a little weird, but it's not, and I'll show you why. You can take some influences from country guitar, like hammer-ons, pull-offs, and that kind of like twangy open string ringing sound, and apply it to a funk groove, and it'll sound funky. The Eagles, for example, a band that was really great at kind of like blending country and funk together. Check out a song called Life in the Fast Lane for a great example of that. So I came up with this little groove that I sort of took from like a basic country train beat in the key of A. Right? So we have these little half-step bends. We have that open A string kind of twanging out like that, a little bit of palm muting on the end. I added a few notes and I put it over a funk groove, and I came up with this. So we kind of have this like head and tail type part. We have this, which is kind of a funky, kind of bass heavy type deal. And then I took the kind of like pull off concept from that train beat, tagged it onto the end. So you can even just take this end part and loop it, and it would sort of give it almost like a twangy kind of country feel. So in time, if you want to lean back on the bridge here and really kind of twang it out. So that's kind of how I'll sometimes approach these open strings, with a little bit of those half-step bends. It might be a quarter step. It's a micro step bend. So let's actually play along to this example right now. And again, we're in the key of A, and I'm kind of picking notes from A minor pentatonic, more or less. All right, let's dig into this groove. So it's going to start with our favorite, the Chang-a-lang. There it is, Chang-a-lang, right? A couple things to keep in mind when you're playing this phrase. I like to use all downstrokes. So I'm powering through the G and the B string with just one stroke down. So, because you got to make sure that both of those notes are kind of happening at the same time, right? So you can do it that way, or you can maybe do upstrokes if you want. Kind of makes it a little sloppier, but it's also kind of cool at the same time. And then we'll finish it off with, I will play it, then you will play it, then I will play it again, and then you will play it, and then we'll be done. Here we go. I'll do it again. With the upstrokes. Your turn. Here we go. Keep going for good measure. All right, as you noticed, I started to kind of like shift between the two different ways I was playing this set of double stops. A couple times I went versus. It's just kind of all about what you want to say. You want to do all downstrokes, you can throw in a mute, right? That sounds cool. Or if you just want to strum the heck out of it, that sounds fine too. It's kind of up to you. This is one where you can kind of get away with it feeling a little sloppy, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right, let's look at a general guitar concept called the double stop. Really all that means is you're playing two notes at the same time. It's not quite a chord, because I guess we would need three notes for it to be technically considered a chord. The cool thing about these is that if you use them in funk, you can almost simulate like a counterpoint horn line. I know that might sound like we're getting kind of deep, but I made this example in the key of G. It's kind of like a G dominant sound, and it starts with this phrase. Real simple. So if you notice, there's a G at the top of each one of these chords, right? So we've got F and G, we've got E and G, then we've got D and G, right? So this could be like your top horn line. And then we've got this thing moving at the bottom on the B string, right? Just adds a little bit more color to what you're playing. That's a very bluesy phrase that we've got. But the same, so you have this B string now that's kind of like ringing out, right? Double stops. Finish it off with F, F sharp, and G. All right. Why is this cool? Well, again, we're kind of bringing in influences from maybe outside of funk. This could be maybe more blues, maybe more country. But again, if you put it in the right groove, it's got a nice bounce to it. All right, so let's check out this example now. All right, let's take a look at this example involving drop D tuning and this cool 7 sharp 9 chord. Keep in mind that 7 sharp 9 chord happens on the accent of beat 4. All right, we're working in 16th notes again, so always keep track of those. Here we go. I'll play it a couple times and then you can play it. All right, so let's go over this real quick. A few things I want you to consider or think about while you're doing this. This first riff, yeah, that should be big and open, right? So you don't have to mute that at all. And then this next riff, that you can mute, right? And then the 7 sharp 9 chord, remember to do the cutoff. And I'll just sort of mute these strings. So the cutoff happens on like 1 E, I believe, if I'm counting it correctly. So 1 E, Well, that's hard to do, but so again, I mentioned maybe using this with distortion. That's important because when you start playing funk with distortion, if the playing's not tight and the muting isn't quite there, it's going to get a little out of control and it won't be funky. Right? Space is key. Got to leave space. All right, so practice it on your own time and leave space. All right, check it out. So let's use drop D tuning to play some funk. This might feel a little alien to some of you because traditionally, I suppose drop D might be used more in rock or metal or something like that, but it doesn't matter. We're going to play some funk with it today. So just to get you started on the tuning, really all you have to do is take your low E string, tune it down a whole step to D. So now you have this nice open power chord that you can chunk around on all day. Some of my favorite bands like to use this tuning and then they'll blend it into a funk groove style, kind of like how we were talking about bringing it into country and making it funky. Well, these guys are kind of bringing in rock and making it funky. So check out like King's X or like Rage Against the Machine or some bands like that. So I came up with this groove that involves drop D tuning and a cool chord that you may or may not know called the 7 sharp 9 chord, or the Jimi Hendrix Purple Haze chord, as sometimes it is more commonly known if you play it in the key of E. But we're in the key of D, so I'll spell it for you real quick. We have D, F sharp, C, and F. Yeah, that's the sound right there. That's what you want. All right, so we're going to end the phrase with a chord like that. There's a really cool King's X tune called Dog Man that has that chord in it and some other cool drop D stuff. So explore at your leisure. But anyhow, so that's the groove. Keep in mind that 7 sharp 9 chord is going to happen on the of beat 4. Again, we're dealing in 16th notes. It's funk, right? Okay, so I'm playing with a clean tone, which is not very heavy rock and roll, but that's okay. I want you to be able to hear all the notes. So when you're practicing at home, once you get the riff down, fire up your favorite overdrive pedal and freak out your parents. So let's play this example. All right, let's talk about ninth chords for a second. James Brown guys use them all the time, so obviously we're going to need to know how to play them. Let's go to the key of E, standard ninth chord voicing that I like to use, and well, you should like to use too. I'll spell out the notes for you. We got E, we got G sharp, we got D, we got F sharp, and we got B. It sounds cool, it sounds funky, it involves kind of the Mixolydian mode if you want to go down that road. It functions as a 1 chord, or maybe a 4 chord, or maybe a 5 chord. But with this particular voicing, the thing I like about it is that the top 3 strings are kind of the funk strings. That's where you get the snap from, right, in this sound. You hear James Brown's guys do stuff like this. Right, so we've got this snappy, kind of funky part built off this ninth chord. A couple other ways you could play it. You could play it up here if you'd like. You can do some cool like sliding stuff with it. Right? Or if you want an even higher voicing, play it up here. For the example that I'm going to teach you, we're going to use the main chord, the heart of all ninth chords, right here. All right, so check it out. I'm going to play some ninth chord funk for you. Okay, let's take a look at these major and minor 7 chords, and we're going to apply them to kind of a funky R&B context. One thing to consider when you're playing this F major 7 chord, remember to try to hammer on with your pinky. Just add a little bit of extra flair there, right? And then when you're approaching this riff, you got to have that triplet in there. It's got to swing, okay? That's important. You'll listen to me do it a couple times and get the feel. All right, let's tackle this groove. One more time. Finish it off. All right, nice work. All right, let's take a look at major and minor 7th chords and how they can be used in groove music. Funk, R&B, soul. You might see these types of chords more in R&B music generally. But of course R&B is funky, so it's kind of all the same really. The example that I have is in the key of C major or A minor, so I'll show you the chords that I'm using. The first one is an F major 7. So we have F, C, E, A, and C. Then we have E minor 7. We have E, B, D, G, and B again. And then the same thing down a whole step is a D minor 7. I'll spell that for you. D, A, C, F, and A. And then we have an A minor 7, kind of this big old bar chord voicing, like that. So A, E, G, C, E, and A again, all right? So why are these chords important? Well, that major 7, minor 7, and kind of the way I will then approach them using a left hand technique with hammer-ons. kind of gives it that R&B flair, right? So I could take those chords and play them as regular major chords. I could play F, or not regular major chords, but regular chords. So like F, and then D minor. It sounds fine, but it doesn't sound, there's not a real there's no vibe there. So this sounds better than, right? So that major 7, minor 7 adds a little bit of sauce, so to speak, all right? So with this example, I'm doing some things here involving my pinky chord. So for this F major 7 chord, instead of just going, I'm going to hammer on with my pinky. You see that? So I hammered on the B string right here. So I'm actually hammering on from a G to an A, right? And then if you want, you can kind of do a similar thing for these minor 7 voicings too, except it's actually a little bit more involved. So you're going to hammer on like the whole chord, right? So we have this bar here on the 7th fret, and then we hammer on with the ring finger and middle finger. Just a little bit of, it's sort of like a stylistic thing that you might want to include when you're approaching those chords. And then in the example, as you'll see, there's a couple little riffs based around like the A minor pentatonic scale. So you got it's kind of, it's like almost like a Hendrix kind of double stop, right? Slide up from D to E, G, A, and then the A minor voicing. So another thing to think about when we tackle this example is it's got to kind of swing a little bit, okay? And as I play it, you'll hear what I mean by that. So let's get into it. All right, let's incorporate these major triads in our double stops over a B minor sounding progression. I'll play the part and then I'll play with the groove. All right, here we go. All right, there you have it. Couple things to think about while you're doing this is to really focus on the G, B, and E strings. Those are your target strings. You don't want any of these guys ringing out. So focus your picking hand. You can even just let it hang out right down here. Keep that wrist nice and loose. So if you want to study these triads a little further, check out a song by the great band called the Gap Band. They have a song called Yearnin' for Your Love, which uses these triads. So that's essentially the part, but they put it over a G chord. So you end up with this really beautiful like G Lydian sound with an out-of-tune low E. So it kind of comes out to be like this. So nice and smooth. Gap Band, check it out. It'll bless you. All right, let's do some more work with R&B flavored funk. For this example, I'm going to use a couple of very basic major triads, but I'm going to put them over a more or less minor sounding chord progression, okay? So for this example, we're going to be in the key of B minor, but the two triads I'm going to use are going to be an A major triad, which is going to be spelled C sharp, E, and A, and then a D major triad, like voiced like this. So we have D, F sharp, and A. So together they're kind of like, hello. But over a B minor, we can sort of imply these other sounds. So for example, if I play this A major triad over a B minor, we end up what's called like a B11, which is a really pretty sound. Here's that D triad over B. Almost almost like a B minor 9, B minor 11 kind of sound, right? So together, I'm going to put them in this rhythmic context, which is a very typical R&B type of lick. And that's really all you need to play, right? But I'm going to incorporate the call and response thing and make the lick go a little deeper. So I'm going to add some double stops. Now we're thinking in terms of D major pentatonic double stops, right? So we have them up here. This is all kind of like I'm harmonizing with myself in the D major pentatonic scale. So. So we put them together, I came up with this. Right? So that's our little phrase, and it's all more or less in D major, but over B minor, we get these new colors. All right, so let's take this lick and put it into a groove. All right, so these two chord voicings are super important when it comes to funk guitar, almost as important as the ninth chord. To me, they're just as important as far as their application for certain styles. It's a minor 7 and a minor 6 chord, but very specific voicing. Okay, so we're going to be in the key of D, and I'm going to think about it as being kind of up here on the 10th fret, sort of minor, D minor pentatonic box, right? So here's the first shape. So we've got the flat 7 on the bottom, so we've got C, F, C again, and then D. There's our minor 7 sound. All right? Now, to make a minor 6, well, we're just going to take that 7 and move it down a half step. All right, so I've replaced the C with a B. So now that we've got these two chords, we can add a third one if we want. We can add that 7 sus4 voicing. Just as sort of like a bow to wrap it all up. So. And what I'll do then is instead of like switching my fingers to fret it like this, I'll actually just fret it with my 3rd and 4th finger and just do a nice bar here. Kind of keeps the amount of motion in the left hand to a minimum. So now that you've got those 3 chords, the cool thing is you can figure out different ways to switch between that 7th and that 6th, right? 7th, so maybe you want to start with the 6th and go to the 7th, something like this. Or maybe 6 to 7, but do it like this. Possibilities are really endless. I use that chord all the time, especially if I'm in any kind of like 1-chord funk vamp. Great voicings. So let's check it out with the example. All right, here we are with the minor 7 sus4 chord, or as I like to call it, the boogie chord. Why? Because if you chang-a-lang it, it's just everyone wants to dance as soon as you do that. In fact, everyone in this room is going to dance as soon as I start doing this. So let's talk about it. We're in the key of C, or C minor in this case, and I'll spell it. Again, it's just 3 notes on the G, B, and E strings. Again, we want that tight, light, bright tone, right? So G, B, and E strings are great for that. There's our voicing, all right? Let's spell it out. F, B flat or A sharp, and D sharp or E flat, either way you want to look at it. I like to mix sharps and flats, clearly. So we have the 4, the flat 7, and the flat 3, all right? Over a C bass note, we have that sound. Cool suspended sound, it's hip, I dig it. So why do we call it the boogie chord? Well, it kind of has to do with how you apply it rhythmically. Chang-a-lang. So if we have kind of a, again, maybe like this 4 on the floor kind of thing, right? Or if you want to do what's called a ride, you'll just hit those 16th notes and just keep it going as the band, propels forward, like 1, 2, 3. All right, let's take a look at this minor 7 sus4 in a groove. All right, let's check out this minor 7 sus4 chord in the key of C. Along to this groove here, we've got a static C bass note. I'm gonna play it, and you can play it. I'll play it again, and then you can play it. Check it out. And now we'll do a ride. Try that. Just ride. 16th notes. Chang-a-lang. All right, well there it is. There's the boogie chord. Add that to your funk arsenal. All right, well now that we've developed our 9th chord here, one of the other cool things you can do with funk guitar is create progressions that involve chords and riffs, or single note lines that kind of bounce off one another. The idea behind this is to come up with a guitar part that's almost like a call and response type of thing, right? So for example, we'll use the 9th chord again, except this time we're going to go to the key of D. So we're going to take that shape that I just showed you and move it down to the 5th fret root, okay? There we go. So now we're working in this position. I'm going to build some kind of licks that are based off of major pentatonic scale. And like the D Mixolydian blues scale, which they're kind of like interchangeable depending on where you want to put your third. You know, yay the blues. Bend notes. All right, so what are we doing here? Well, we've got this 9th chord, and then we're gonna, like, I don't know, maybe we'll put like a little riff in between it, right? So we have the call, and then the response. Right, so together, maybe we'll throw in another response at the end of that, so check it out. Why is this cool? Well, for 2 reasons. 1, you can drop your pick while you do it. 2, it gives your other guitar player in the band something to do if you don't want to play both parts yourself. So your job could be, and then the other guy goes, maybe with a different tone or a different kind of sound, different pickup, so you get this nice contrast. Also, when you're playing these lines, it gives your bass player something to latch onto, right? So he can go. Right, so now you've got this unison thing between the guitars and the bass, which sounds really great. All right, let's do an example right now. All right, let's check out this open string E minor type of riff that we've got. Now remember, the right hand is key here because we don't want those strings ringing out any longer than they need to, right? We don't want this. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just not what we want, all right? So I'll play it a couple times and throw it back to you. Check it out. Go for it. All right, a couple things to consider. Again, our chang-a-lang. Chang-a-lang-a-lang. And notice how when I go into those strumming on those open strings, I'm kind of laying back, right? And then I emphasize that downbeat. You can lay real far back if you want. There you go. Don't be afraid of open strings. All right, let's check out how to use some open strings to create some funky sounds, but not quite like we've been using open strings before. This is actually pretty genre specific. In fact, I got this idea from listening to a lot of Sly and the Family Stone. Their guitar player would do this kind of crazy thing where he'll hammer on a note, but then lackadaisically incorporate just the rest of the strings on the guitar that he's not even playing. So you end up with a sound that's kind of like this. So it feels like E minor, because it is, but it has this real raggedy kind of cool tone to it. So I said, well, maybe we should explore this a little further. So I'm working in E minor, kind of like this position over kind of on the 7th fret. Right? And what I'm doing is I'm hammering on from a D to an E, and then sort of just sneaking in these open top strings, the D, G, B, and E string. This just sort of is there. But again, to keep it funky, you have to put the cutoff in the right place. So it's almost like 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where the cutoff happens, okay? And then after that, I'm going to throw in like a G and an A. So what would be a cool thing for you to do is to practice kind of figuring out where these open string little tidbits can happen, right? Works great on the A string, like if you want to have like an open A. Even the open D string, that'll be cool. I found this one's cool. This is almost like an E mixolydian sound if I use the G string. So really all we're dealing with here is timbre. That's what I want to incorporate here is I want you guys to understand that this is a tone that you can apply to your funk playing just to kind of give it a little bit more sauce or flavor, right? So let's look at this example. I'll play it a few times and then we'll play it to the backing track. So the thing is you can kind of make it a little bit sloppy. It's supposed to sound raggedy, all right? Let's play with the backing track. All right, let's take a look at this single note line melodic statement over this example. Now you'll notice there are some chords here, some chord changes. I'll show them to you. F major 7, E minor 7, D minor 7, a G major, and then an A minor. All right, so those are going to be going through the cycle, but we're not going to quite focus on those chords. You can if you want, but for the sake of this, we're going to focus on this repetitive line. It's all in the key of C major. Again, C major and A minor are kind of the same thing. So we're going to just be hanging out right there, pivoting over this G string. So here we go. All right, kind of a disco roller skating type of vibe there. If you notice, I'm doing a lot of muting with my right hand. That's also important. You could play it without the muting, but it wouldn't quite sit as well in the pocket. So I like to just use a little bit of right hand muting. That way each note is nice and tight, right? And you don't have too much variation as far as the dynamics of each note, okay? So something to think about while you're funking along there. Come up with your own lines. You know, like I said, you can even just stay on C the whole time. So you can try that or, yeah, go for it. All right, let's talk about using single notes to create some repetitive melodic lines that also will add some rhythmic content to your playing. The cool thing about stuff like this is that it doesn't really require a lot because the flavor comes from the repetitiveness, right? So, for example, let's go to the key of C. There she is. And I'm going to kind of create this little riff just based off of like the C major pentatonic scale, right? I'm going to be existing sort of in this world. Something like this. I'm just staying on one note, right? So you can have all these chords going around in the key of C, and you're just right here. Maybe you want to add a couple more notes, like the example that I'm going to show you in just a second is going to be that exact thing. Why is this cool? Well, it's sort of like a textural thing. Like if you were in a recording studio or something, you might want to add this to give a little, just a different texture to like a chorus of a song or something. One thing to keep in mind, however, is the tone of where you are actually playing these parts. Why I like to do it down here is because when I'm focused kind of around the G string as my key center, that has a different tone than if I played it up here. It's the same note, but you can hear the difference. This is round. It sounds okay, but it's a little too big. It takes up too much space. This has a little less low end to it, right? So you're, again, I think we talked about this earlier, but you're staying out of the way of other instruments, right? So something to think about when you're coming up with these parts. Some guys to listen to who are great at this: Paul Jackson Jr., David Williams, two of the legendary session players from the 70s, 80s, 90s. They played on Michael Jackson records and all these great records. All right, let's take a look at this concept of creating a repetitive melodic line over an example. All right, let's take a look at an example involving this thumb bass comping style. I'll play it myself a little slower before I hit the backing track because the backing track is kind of quick. So check it out. And if you want, you can do that kind of open E hammer-on that I've been doing. It's those little rhythmic nuances that you can throw in that make it groove a little harder. Let's fire up this backing track. Like I said, it's a little fast. All right, there you have it. So sit with this one a little bit. It might take just a second to get the coordination of your right and left hand together, but I promise you it's easier than walking and chewing gum at the same time. All right, for this next technique, you don't even need a guitar pick. So if you dropped it in the sound hole of your acoustic, you can just leave it there until we're done. What we're going to do is use our thumb and some fingers on this hand to kind of create a marriage between like a bass line and a little chord progression. One of my favorite guitar players in the world, I learned this from, his name is Charlie Hunter. You should check him out when you get a chance. So, check it out. We're going to end up with something like this. So we're in the key of A minor, but we're really going to simplify this chord, right? So we have our bass note, but then from the A minor, we're only going to take two notes. We're going to take G, and we're going to take C. So we have our flat 7 and our minor third, right? And then just for a little bit of flair, I'm going to drop that G down to an F sharp. So then we have a kind of like an A Dorian sound, A minor 6 kind of feel, if you like. Here's where the magic happens. It's coordinating the bass thump with the chordal hit, so to speak. So if I was just to play the bottom or the bass line, it'd be like this. If I were just going to play the chord part, it'd be like this. Okay, so now we've got the left hand working. The right hand, the thumb is going to handle what's happening on the low E string, so that bass note. And then I like to use my middle finger and my ring finger because we're going to be operating with the D and the G string. So if I put this all together, so it's almost like a boom pap, boom pap pap, boom pap, boom pap pap. That's the groove, okay? If you want to throw in a little bit of extra percussive stuff with your right hand to help keep time, that always actually kind of sounds cool. Like if you want to slap on beat, I think it's beat 2. A lot of guitar players are kind of doing this. John Mayer does this a lot when he's playing acoustic or when he's playing electric. Maybe if you're playing a solo gig and you need to comp with yourself, you can get like an octave pedal to throw on and really get those bass tones going. So try it with these 6th string voicings, and then maybe try it with some 5th string voicings too. So like for example, if I wanted to play A minor up here, right, for maybe a little bit of a brighter tone, same notes, A, G, C sharp. I'm dropping the G down to the G flat again. Yeah, this might take some time as it might feel a little bit unorthodox to you, but we'll rock it with this example and you can see how I do it. All right, I hope you enjoyed this funk guitar course. I'm Mark Lettieri with Musician's Toolkit. Happy grooving. I don't know if the industry has changed that dramatically since I started with Snarky Puppy, because we kind of started as it was in the phase that it's kind of still in now, where it's pretty decentralized. I think a lot of people would say, well, there is no music industry, bro, you know. But it's true. It's like record labels are not, well, I guess maybe they are throwing money at artists, but not in the same way that they used to, where they would then nurture that artist and help them create a catalog and develop them. They just throw the money at them, and if something happens, great. If not, then the artist is in debt forever. But you know, Snarky Puppy, for example, is kind of in some way a product of the internet's involvement in music. A lot of our growth happened because we started putting videos on YouTube, which I think a lot of artists are now benefiting from today, which can be really great. So Snarky Puppy did have a big boost of visibility because of our stuff was getting put on YouTube, and also kind of the way that we were recording our projects with the live in the studio with the audience thing was very unique. But we didn't just be a YouTube band, we got back on the road and kept playing shows. That kind of stuff will never change. Got to get in the van, you know. But now it's interesting because I'm finding that, especially with the stuff that I do as an instrumental guitar composer, it's cool that because of the internet, I can now find those people that really dig that stuff maybe a lot easier than I could have a little while ago, where I would maybe have to have a label or maybe have to have a guitar magazine write about me or something like that. Nowadays, I can put a video on Facebook and it gets shared around and people go, oh, this guy has a record, cool, check it out. You know, so that's been awesome. I try to embrace the internet as best I can. You know, a lot of people have some arguments about like, well, how artists are compensated with that respect. You know, like if I put a video on Facebook of an original composition or something, and it gets 100,000 views, well, I don't see any money from that. Should I? You know, I don't know. You know, well, yeah, I'd like to. But, that's that's sort of the murky waters that we're navigating right now. Is like content is everywhere. It's so easy to get. It's so easy to put your content out there, but are we getting compensated in the sense that we can then keep making this content for people? Well, where do I see the music industry going? I hope that it goes back into the hands of the creative people, the people that are putting out the art, the people that are the content creators. I'll say that. I think if anything has been said about the success of a lot of independent artists and bands is that maybe you don't need big record deal / bank loan, because that's kind of what it is, to do what you need to do. For every pop artist that sort of has that support, there are 100 indie artists that are actually doing okay, or at least good enough for them. You know, they are making a living doing it. Just because they're not a super rock and roll star, famous, doesn't mean that they're not making a living. It's hard. It doesn't get any easier for anybody. Yeah, it's an interesting time, man. You know, because obviously I wasn't alive in the 70s or so when record labels had these huge budgets to just like, yeah, man, you know, just hang out in the studio for a year. No problem. And then we'll pay for you to go on tour. Woo! I wasn't around for that, so I don't know much about that. I just know that now, you know, when I go to make a record, I save up some money and then I do it. You know, if that's not your thing, you know, you can do like the whole crowdfunding thing. I know that's popular with a lot of independent artists too. So it's going to be interesting to see where it happens in 20 years. As long as my bills are still paid, I'm all right. I feel okay. What it's enabled me to do is work a little bit more efficiently with the people that actually do that. Like for example, when I hire a graphic artist to do a poster or an album cover, I know exactly what I want and I know how to communicate that to them. You know, I know about iFlow and sightlines and how, you know, the kerning of the letters should line up and all that kind of stuff. Just like when I'm maybe working on a bio with somebody, I essentially will write them myself, because it's kind of like writing a press release in a sense. So I do have that background, and I know how to then communicate with someone who is then doing that for me if I need them to do that, you know. And I think what it has helped me with is just to kind of understand the value of a brand. You know, I sort of am my own brand, and now with everything that I'm doing on social media, I have to make sure that everything is connected, everything has a succinct message. Well, sort of. I mean, you know, if you watch any of my Instagram videos, they're all over the place, but it has to be wrapped up under this one thing that is Mark Lettieri, and I have to present that in a professional way, in a clear way, with as little grammatical error as possible. If that's one thing I did learn from being in PR school, is this like, figure out where to put your commas and capitalization and all that, because when I see flyers for bands and there's like grammatical error, I'm not interested. Like maybe I'm being a little bit over the top about this, but it's like, you know, guys, spell the names right. Like spell, please. You know, I'd like to come see your band, but you can't spell. So I think there are some people that will greatly benefit from an education in music, and there are people that don't need to do it. It's all a matter of who you are as a person and how you feel like you can go out and get something. For me, I had to kind of do a lot of stuff on my own, obviously because I wasn't being held accountable in a classroom setting to prepare certain kinds of music to then perform it to a certain standard. So I had to do all that on my own. I had to hold myself accountable for getting better at guitar. I did have a teacher in college. I took jazz guitar as like an elective, and I would meet with him like once a week for about a year and a half, and it was great. It was fantastic, but it was very relaxed. It was not, you know, he gave me an A, and I probably didn't deserve it just because he was cool, you know. But I wasn't doing juries or any of that. But the benefit to a music education is that it will help you with your network, because you're in class with people that are doing the same things that you are doing, and when you all finish, you're all going out into the real world, but you also then all know each other. And in this business, networking is 100% what will keep the lights on in your apartment. or your house or whatever. So I think that is a real benefit of music education. But if you aren't in music school, it's okay. Just know that you will then have to hold yourself accountable for improving and learning stuff and building a network then, because you're not surrounded by one already. I had to kind of go out and make one for myself. Music education in schools is incredibly important because it helps nurture passion. If a kid is interested in music or whatever, an instrument or vocals or writing or producing or whatever, it doesn't matter, that needs to be nurtured. Just like a kid was interested in science or math. It's the same thing. Or sports, whatever. They need to have that outlet. They need to have people that are there that are going to hold them accountable for improving and that are going to keep them inspired. I was able to, in high school, I was in the high school jazz band for a year. I wish I had done it all 4 years, but I never really thought about it until the last year. And it was great. It was so fun. My teacher was a nutcase, and it was the best. Because I wasn't even really a jazz guitar dude. I was playing my Freddie Green, chanks, and it was fun. It was the best class. And even if it was just because I got to make music with a bunch of cool people. And music education in schools lets you do that. It surrounds you with people that are like you. It creates a peer group for you. It makes you feel like you have something you belong to. And when you're 14 and the hormones is raging, that stuff's important, right? And if your school doesn't have that, find a way to get it. Have a guitar teacher or a teacher of some kind that you can meet with, or start a band with your friends. Any place where you can be communicating musically with people and staying inspired is paramount. Well, music is just as important as all those other things because it is. There's really no other way to say that. We look at we idolize superstar athletes and we idolize superstar actors and rock and roll stars, musicians, whatever. But those rock and roll stars may or may not have had any sort of educational background scholastically to get where they got. But I'm pretty sure everyone that plays for the Lakers played b-ball in middle school and high school and had a coach, right? So it's strange how we value all these people's contributions as these heroes, but we don't really, how they got to those places is very different. Everyone knows that if you study music, it helps your brain. So it's I don't know, dude. I should ask the question to you. Why aren't we putting more money into it? Why are we cutting music programs in school? Why are schools in Texas getting $8 billion of budget to build a stupid football stadium? That's great, cool, awesome. I have no problem with football. But, the band is in a ditch in the road, trying to rehearse or whatever it is. So, I don't know. That's what we want. America, it's like Rome. We value our gladiators, but maybe not our sculptors. Well, my experience in music education was pretty varied. I'm very thankful that I had my parents were able to have me have a guitar teacher that would come to my house weekly during high school. That was great because my other extracurricular activities were not in music education in schools. It was athletics. But I remember early on, every school I was in had some kind of band, but I just wasn't interested in it. But it was there, thankfully, So my music education was sort of outside of school until I got just joined the jazz band my senior year of high school. I'm not sure why I didn't ever get so into it. It might have just been time, or maybe I just would rather play soccer or run track than do band practice with a big band after school. And I think maybe a big part of it was that the band, the school band, was playing music that I didn't care about. I would rather go home and play Hey Joe with my buddies in a garage than play whatever the concert band was playing. It just wasn't something that was interesting. If my school had had like a rock and roll program, probably would have been way into it. Why don't they? Maybe that's why I didn't get that involved. It was just stylistically something that I wasn't interested in, you know. Well, if you can get some kind of private instruction, just whenever you can do it, it's always good. It's always good having someone that can hold you accountable for your progress. I think that's the most important. And nowadays you can, you know, there's instructors online that will do that. There's all kinds of cool online music instruction courses that will, you know, do step by step, lead you through all different kinds of programs and whatnot. And even if you're not into that, heck, you can go on YouTube and watch your favorite guitar player play, and you can rewind that sucker 1,000,000 times till you figure out every single note that he's playing. So it's actually probably easier than ever to get better at music or at learning your craft now, because there's so much out there. I would assume there are other ways that kids can get involved with music outside of school. But it might not have to be something that's, well, okay, I'll say this. One thing I kind of left out was that I was very involved in my church as a kid, and they had a band, and we would play, it was kind of cool. We would kind of play worship music, but we would mostly play secular music. So like we had this weekly service, like a youth hang kind of thing, and we would play like Bob Marley tunes and Santana and Curtis Mayfield and Metallica and all this kind of stuff, just because that's what kids, you know, that's what we wanted to hear. Yeah, so you can get involved in your church if that's your thing. But really, I mean, find friends from your school that are also doing it and just do that with them. Like some of my most informative experiences as a young player was just hanging out in my friend's garage, trying to play songs, trying to write songs, trying to figure out the bridge to this Ozzy Osbourne tune, and then going and order pizza. Like that's what kind of kept me inspired, you know? And I think because as creative people need to be with other creative people and have that kind of bond. And I think that's like probably the most important education you can have. If it's not scholastic, if you don't have that opportunity, be around like-minded people that are doing what you want to do. I've always kind of wished I could have been a better reader. And the teacher that I studied with in high school privately was like, dude, you need to know how to do this. And I was like, no, I want to play Eruption. And now I'm kind of like, shoot, I probably should have like suffered through learning the dots of Mary Had a Little Lamb, you know, like he told me to, you know. Do I use reading a lot in my career? No, but it is one of those things that's like, I wish I could be better at it. That kind of like formal sort of stuff may have been cool for me. I think music education has helped me in sort of an emotional context, because the people that were my teachers also kind of became my mentors and like bigger brothers. And just spending an hour with them, you know, once a week or every other week, we could talk about music, but we could just talk about life. You know, they were older, they had had more experiences, music career and not. And so it was just nice kind of having that mentorship to kind of keep me grounded and bounce some ideas and bounce some feelings off of. You know, we all go through all kinds of things in our lives, whether it's family issues or relationships or job or who knows what. And music has always been there for me as something that I can kind of just lose myself in, immerse myself in, get on stage, play away some frustrations, all that kind of stuff. But having those guys in my life as kind of like mentors has always helped, I think, kind of keep me grounded and keep me on the right path, so to speak. I've applied the things I've learned from mentors in the people that I mentor, or the younger players who email me or whatever and just have questions about how to make their careers work. And I'm still trying to figure out mine, but hopefully if I can impart any kind of wisdom into them and keep them excited and maybe give them some new thoughts on how to go about things, that's important to me. You know, trying to be able to inspire other people if I can in some small way. So it's just kind of giving back because of stuff that's been given to me. So yes, I do have a daughter, and as far as getting her involved in music, well, she's going to grow up in a musical household. There will always be music playing. We've noticed that Pat Metheny Records calm her down, which is nice. So thanks, Pat. And if she wants to do it for a career, I will support that. I'm never going to tell her not to do anything that she's passionate about. You know, my wife is a very creative person and is interested in. She works in Pilates, so we're thinking maybe my daughter might be a dancer or something. But who knows? Whatever she wants to do is fine. Pursuing the career as a professional musician is hard, and I will let her know that it is. We'll navigate those bridges when we come to them. So, but as long as she's happy with whatever she's doing, I'm all for it. So I'm not going to force her into music, I don't think, because my parents didn't do that. They just saw that I had an interest and they nurtured that. So if she shows interest, I will nurture that. If she's like, whatever, Dad, I'm not into it, I'm fine with me. Not offended at all. The story with Snarky Puppy. Well, speaking of bands that actually kind of maybe made it, I guess we've made it, I don't know. But even all the guys in that band do other stuff. So that said, they had been around for maybe 4 years or so before I had even heard of them. They all went to this college up in Denton, Texas, called the University of North Texas. I was in Fort Worth at Texas Christian University. So I was playing in bands down there, they were up there, and then we all sort of graduated around the same time, and then I met them working in the Dallas like gospel R&B scene. A lot of the Denton UNT jazz kids kind of will funnel down into Dallas to do session work and that sort of thing. And I sort of funneled the other way from Fort Worth. So we had a lot of mutual friends. I was playing in a band at the time that the band leader of which had met Michael from Snarky Puppy, and we started then doing gigs together, both of those bands. So I was kind of like a fan of Snarky before I ended up playing with him. And then I did like a little sort of like guest feature, not really a feature, but just like a guest part on this record they did in 2008 called Bring Us the Bright. It was funny. It was like 16 or 24 bars of just me playing clean rhythm guitar, like 5 tracks of myself, just as like this interlude on this one song. And then after that, maybe a few months later, there was like a series of shows that the other 2 guitar players in the band, Bob and Chris, just weren't available to do. That was sort of the story of Snarky Puppy. Michael would just book more gigs than anyone could actually commit to, and so he would just start getting subs, but then these subs would become part of the band. And so that's kind of how I started out, was just as like a sub, you know, and then became, nobody really, you know, like I didn't like sign a contract to become a member or whatever it is, but I just was in the band, you know. So that was like 2009 probably, was when I started playing live with them and doing all the records and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, here we are, you know, 3 Grammys later. It feels pretty good. Yeah, there are a lot of members in the band simply because we just play a lot, you know. It's almost like we joke it's like a baseball team. And for a while there, I always joked that I was like the closer, like the closing pitcher, because I would always do like the tail end of the tours, like the last week, the last 2 weeks, whatever, the relief, you know, come and finish the game or whatever. But yeah, we have 3 drummers, 3 guitar players, 4, 5 keyboardists. One of them plays trumpet also. 2 sax, I guess, yeah, so 3 trumpet, 3 percussion, and 1 bass player. Oh, and a violinist. And then, yeah, so, but then we tour with maybe 8 or 9, sometimes 10, usually like around 9. And then people just kind of come in and out, you know, subs tap out, you know, it's like, I'm good, bring in the other running back or whatever, the relief pitcher. My main role is just play the guitar parts, essentially, because when we record, there's 3 of us, so there's a lot going on. But then when we play live, there's usually just 1 guitar player. So job number 1 is cover as many parts as you can. Sometimes it's the guitar parts, sometimes it's other parts, melodies and various other things. And then role number 2 is do it as Mark Lettieri. I think. I hope. That's what I've been doing. So stylistically, I think, I mean, the three of us, myself, Bob Lanzetti, and Chris McQueen, are very different stylistically. I come from a funk, rock, R&B, soul, pop background. You know, the other fellas have a deeper interest in indie rock and experimental music and various other things. And so it's interesting when we are playing live and then having to interpret each other's guitar parts that we played on the record. But I think that's what's cool, and I think that's what gives the audience something new every time to see. But everyone in the band is allowed to write songs. I wrote a tune for the last record, so that's cool. So we all have the option to do that. Everyone kind of is an arranger of the tunes when we go to record. And Michael's kind of the head producer, but everyone kind of offers production assistance and ideas. Definitely, we run into the what is the too many chiefs, not enough Indians problem, but we've obviously made it work somehow. So my role in the band is guitar player first, Mark Lettieri guitar player second, and then entertainer third, throwing guitar picks, making rock faces and standing on the monitors and all that kind of stuff. Somebody's got to do it. I think the most interesting thing I've learned from being in Snarky Puppy is restraint, how to not play. And as guitar players, we like to play. We like to play all the notes all the time. But when you're in a band that big, you can't. You have to leave space for other instruments. You have to leave space for the melody. You have to leave space for the soloists, because it just makes the performance better. If people can actually hear what song you're doing. If you want to come see me play all the notes, come to see my trio, because there's only three of us, so I got to play all the parts. But yeah, it's really helped me learn restraint and a lot of arranging ideas too. Working with those guys, it has been really influential in my writing and in my arranging. Just how instruments fit together, how sounds fit together, which helps me a lot in arranging and production as well. So, well, the trio is the live interpretation of all of my recorded music as Mark Lettieri. And the two main dudes that help me out are Wes Stevenson on bass and Jason Thomas on drums. And Jason plays in Snarky Puppy as well, but has also been with Marcus Miller and Roy Hargrove, and he was with Philip Phillips when I was with Philip. Wes has a really incredible band called the Funky Knuckles in Dallas, and they're like really heavy, like intense jazz fusion, like punchy in the face music. And so it's great having those two fellas come and interpret my tunes. And they do record with me as well. But the recordings are not just trio. I do all kinds of guitar overdubs. I have keyboard players come in. And there's all sorts of layers and things. But those fellas, I feel like I can take those compositions that have all these parts and all these sounds and just play them as the three of us, and the songs still stand up and work. Those guys are some of the best in the world. So it's cool, and we're going to start touring some more. Hopefully, every year we'll do some kind of tour. This year we're going to the West Coast. And we're going to Ireland, too, actually, in November. That'll be a lot of fun. But we also have we have a weekly residency in Dallas now at a place called the Independent Bar and Kitchen. We play there every Tuesday, just about every Tuesday when we're home, And that's great because we can stretch out. I can try new songs. We can basically just rehearse in front of our friends, And it's become a cool thing. A lot of folks are coming and hanging out, and every now and then I'll bring in like some guest artists and have them do an opening set or sit in with us or whatever. So it's becoming a thing now. I'm excited about it. I think every year is a little different depending on, as far as how often I'm on tour. There were a few years back I was gone a lot. I would do a Snarky thing, and then I did a long Philip Phillips tour, or I would do a Snarky thing and then I'd do a long Erykah Badu tour or something like that. Now it varies. You know what it is? It's a lot of like what they call spot dates, where it's just like a weekend here, a day there, 3 days there, and that stuff adds up. It's hard to keep track of how many of them there are. I haven't done like a really long, over a month tour in a year or two. I don't know when that'll actually happen again. I guess we'll see. I don't know. We have a baby now, so might have to take a break. Musical experience in college was was really great. TCU does have a music program. It's more based around music education and classical music. They have a jazz band, but I don't think they have a jazz degree. However, they do have a fantastic in-house jazz guitar teacher who I studied. His name is Tom Burchill, and I studied with him for about a year and a half as like an elective. But I would still sometimes like play with some of the students that were in the music program and who played in the big band there. Every now and then they would do these like little jazz combo concerts, but there just weren't a lot of guitar players at the school, so those guys would be like, hey man, I'm doing this combo concert thing at the music school, can you come play some tunes with me? So I would do that. I didn't even know UNT had a music program until I met those guys. UNT to me was just the school that TCU beat the crap out of in football every year. And I was like, oh, they have a music school. Okay, great. I always got to dig UNT if I get a chance, you know. But anyhow, so most of my music education then in college, outside of the time I spent with Tom doing a little bit of jazz stuff, was playing in local bands. You know, I had a band. We were kind of like a jam rock funk, you know, let's play at a bar till 2 a.m. and, you know, sweep everyone out of the front door kind of thing, and play at frat parties, and, you know, just dumb college rock and roll stuff. We'll leave it at that. But you know, that was important to me because I was sort of had to learn how to book shows and run a rehearsal and, you know, do promotion. I remember like I'd finish studying for a test and then go print out a bunch of flyers and then like put them up all over campus and then hope that the campus police didn't take them down before everybody saw them, you know. I remember we would like draw on the sidewalks with chalk, you know, like come see our, you know, the band. We were called the League. Yeah. There are recordings. Not on iTunes though. Thankfully. But if you ask nicely, I'll send them to you. Well, let's see. The most interesting thing I've experienced on tour. It was very interesting standing behind Jeff Beck's stacks of amps watching him play at the Tokyo Jazz Festival, the Blue Note Jazz Festival in Tokyo. That was interesting and just flat out amazing and loud. Probably the loudest guitar I've ever heard in my life, but I didn't care because it was Jeff. That was very interesting. I had a chicken thrown on stage one time, not on tour. It was with a country band in Fort Worth playing a fraternity party. And somebody threw a chicken on stage, because apparently that's what you do. And it hit the mic stand, and the mic stand hit me in the face, and then the chicken fell on my pedals and started turning things on and off. I felt really bad, because I love animals, and I was like, this is ridiculous. But then now I laugh about it, you know. How has my playing style informed itself over the years? Well, it's gone from wanting to be a speedy, shreddy kind of guy into something a little bit more subdued, I think, with more of an emphasis on melody and groove. I think that's kind of been my thing that I've focused on a lot is feel, groove. You could say funk, but I don't want to put a style on it. I think it's just sort of like a time feel thing that I try to incorporate into everything that I play. Whether it's a funk style or not, it could be rock, it could be country, whatever. It's gotta swing, it's gotta feel good, you know. And I think a lot of that came from playing with some really great rhythm sections in Dallas. That city has a rich soul scene and R&B, and they sort of phrase that kind of style in their own way. And I think it's really influenced the way that I play. It's kind of like the Dallas sound. If you want an example, that could be like Erykah Badu or Roy Hargrove or something, or even Kirk Franklin, some of the gospel artists. All the fellas that were instrumental in those artists' careers are all playing in Dallas, and I get to play with them. And they've really informed how I approach groove. And so, as a guitar player now, my sound is kind of a mix of that, but still with a little bit of the kind of like fiery stuff that I used to be into in my teens, you know. I don't know if I have a favorite style to play. Sometimes I just love jamming on some like Minneapolis style funk, but then occasionally I just love like hammering power chords and playing like loud rock and roll. You know, anytime Snarky Puppy does a record, especially when we bring in outside artists to do the family dinner stuff, there's always, I mean, stylistically like all over the place. So we had a woman from Peru come and do some songs with us. So I'm like trying to play. I was playing baritone guitar on like this Peruvian sort of like folk tune. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was cool to kind of like try to put myself in that headspace. I think for me, it's always been important for me to learn different styles and to try to learn how to do them authentically as far as the approach on the guitar and the tone that is involved. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to sound like myself doing all those styles, which hopefully is what, you know, people are wanting to call me for. Because I don't think I could ever be like a totally traditional sounding country guitar player or gospel guitar player or vice versa. It's going to sound like Mark Lettieri doing those things. And I'm okay with that at this point in my life. My favorite artists to perform with aren't necessarily famous, but they're awesome. There's a dear friend of mine in Texas named Keith Young, and he's an incredible like soul rock singer dude. And we haven't played together in a while, but every time we do, it's always just really fun. It definitely feels like Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, or like Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth, like that kind of thing. Another great friend of mine, his name is Adrian Hewlett, another great singer from Dallas. You know, so thankfully everyone that I've had the pleasure of supporting has been really great and really exciting. You know, touring with Philip Phillips had its own special kind of sound. You know, playing with Erykah Badu, of course. You know, heck, playing with Snarky Puppy counts. I think what it is anytime I'm able to sort of be myself, but at the same time let someone else be really great, it feels good. So.